Alright, let's talk about Bernie Sanders, because this is actually quite funny. Bernie Sanders, Soviet Union, Venezuela doesn't count as examples of failed socialism. Why not? Because they failed? Anyway, let's jump into it. So we have a video here that's 4 minutes. Call us the number of socialist and capitalist experiments that have failed. When criticizing socialism, don't bring up the Soviet Union or Venezuela to Bernie Sanders. Sanders, who's an independent from Vermont, dismissed the connection between the failed socialist states and his own vision of America during an interview on Comedy Central's The Daily Show Tuesday. Obviously, Soviet Union was an authoritarian society with no democratic right. And I think that if you know history, you know the Democrat Socialists fought and stood up against that, the 2020 Democrat hopeful said. So you can look at the existing in the what existed in the Soviet Union or Venezuela. That is not what I'm talking about at all. The Daily Show's Jabuk Young White agreed with Sanders' assessment, saying the examples of failed socialism that critics are using are not socialist democracies, but authoritarian states led by coup, ruthless, and paranoid dictators. Sanders, who owns 3 houses and has earned $1 million annually in recent years, went on to defend someone being a millionaire in his vision of socialist societies. If you say, if what you say in life is all you want to do is make money as possible, and I can screw everything else up, I don't give a damn, then no, I don't think Democrat Socialist is a cup of tea, he said. But if you have a decent heart and say, look, I'm doing really well, but I also want to be a contributor to the well-being of society, so I'm going to pay my fair share of taxes. Which is interesting, because guess what? Bernie Sanders went through and used Trump's new tax cuts. You know, the ones that he's railed against? The tax incentives that he claims were not going to benefit anybody? Well, Bernie Sanders went through and used them themselves to help reduce his income tax. It's funny how they rail against something and then when it ends up being in their benefit, they use it. It's weird, that isn't it? But anyway. The AG of Socialism in America, as he was described during the interview, also outlined why he believes younger generations are attracted to the system. The younger generation, in all likelihood, have a lower standard of living than their parents, he said. Tell that to everybody that has an iPhone. Before also claiming the student loan debts and lack of high-paying jobs and affordable housing make the idea of socialism more egalitarianism appealing. So they have lower standards of living, but, by the way, they also have high student loan debts because they all want to go to university. They lack high-paying jobs because they don't want to get off their ass and make one. They lack affordable housing because they want to live in the Hamptons, and all makes the idea of socialism more appealing. Sounds like they've really got lower standards of living. Why don't they go and tweet about it on their new iPhone and their new iPad and their new iMac and everything else that they have? Because kind of sounds like they have a high standard of living, if you ask me. I know one girl that spends $200 getting her eyelashes done while she sits there and advocates for socialism. Oh my freaking god, I wonder why you have no money at the end of the week. But regardless. Sanders has a promise to transform America with a left-wing version of the economic and environmental justice if he wins the White House. But then the self-described Democrat Socialist, high income, multiple houses, and fondness for air travel have already opened him up to criticism that his lifestyle doesn't always match the rhetoric, which it doesn't. Notably, he owns 3 houses. In 2016, he bought a $775,000 4-bedroom lakefront home in his home state, in addition to a row house in Houston, D.C., as well as a house in Beaumont, Virginia. Sanders also earned $1 million annually in recent years, although he remains on the low end of the senators, Democrats, in their terms of net wealth. Mind you, that's because they're all making a whole shitload of money. Look, at the end of the day, I was watching a video about socialism the other day, actually, and because I wanted to brush up on it, and someone turned around and they said in the video, the way socialism works is that the government comes in and the government controls everything, right? So the government will come in and take control of mass production, all this sort of stuff, everything, right? And then at the end of the day, the government then designates, what things have to be made. It's a very large sort of top-down government approach to everything. All right, so if you like small governments, you hate socialism generally. The thing is that they said that at the end of the day, the government will always serve the own interest of whoever's in charge. So, for example, with socialism, right? Say Bernie Sanders was to come into power. Bernie Sanders and his government would then control mass production. So if Bernie Sanders, for example, wanted a new TV, he would start mass production more of TVs, for example. And it's this sort of corruption that sneaks in. And the people that tend to get in these positions of powers are the ones that always end up being the ones that corrupt the system, because they control the system. Where with capitalism, for example, it's the opposite. People actually control the market, not the government. So when you always have these rich and elite people, for example, advocating for socialism, that in itself should ring alarm bells. When you get people that make $1 million a year turning around saying, we should go through and put in a new system for socialism, you probably should sit there and think, this might not be the best idea. Because I doubt that someone is making $1 million a year will actually advocate for a system that's going to make him less money. Even though he might claim it does. Socialism has failed in every form in every country it's ever been implemented in. Yes, Richard, but that's because it wasn't #real socialism. Apparently. But yeah, you're right, exactly. Yeah, they call it tax cuts breadcrumbs, but they want those so-called breadcrumbs back. Oh yeah, they do. And not only that, but they also claim those so-called breadcrumbs. It's funny that, isn't it? But look, at the end of the day, yeah, Bernie Sanders pushing for socialism. If you want to know why he's doing it, just look at who's living in Venezuela right now. Who is living very comfortably while the rest of the population starve? It's the government officials. The government officials are living the high life while the rest of the population is starving. Same thing with Russia. The same thing with China and all these socialist societies they've tried to bring in the past. It's always the exact same thing. The government officials live the high life. Everybody else starves. And now Bernie Sanders wants to bring in socialism. Guess who do you think is going to go through and is going to live the high life? And guess who do you think is going to starve? G'day kids, I'm more worried about Chinese communists being soft force via economics on us under the threat of military action, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Bernie Sanders will ever win. I don't think the deep state will let Bernie Sanders win because he's a socialist. I don't think the deep state wants socialism any more than they want Trump to be elected. Big boats popping up by Sydney on the way home from Afghan action. Yeah, right. Big boats popping by Sydney on the way home from Afghan action. Okay. But yeah, I don't think the deep state wants socialism. So they will go through and they will elect someone like Joe Biden, for example. And that's what's going to happen with the election. I'm calling it now. Joe Biden's going to win the election. Not because he's popular, not because at the end of the day he has the base to support him, but because he has the right political opinion and he has the right powers in charge to support him. By the way, we have a bit of an update on that, but we're actually going to make a video on that. So I'm trying to get tomorrow night off again, off work, because I've still got holidays I've got to use up. And we might put up a video tomorrow, which is really going to be illuminating, and it's probably going to be more censored than anything we've ever done, because it's very much against the deep state. We'll give you a hint. It has to do with the 2020 elections. But guys, apart from that, yeah, look, at the end of the day, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below regarding Bernie Sanders, Soviet Union, and Venezuela. He doesn't want to count them as socialism, but that's because they failed. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below.